What began as a simple teaching job in a high school soon turns into a dangerous game of obsession where two students develop an unsettling fixation on their new teacher. However, their devotion eventually turns into something far darker, and after becoming so engrossed in their obsessions, they are willing to cross any line and break any rule just to keep him. In the opening scene of the movie, we see a janitor finishing up his cleaning duties for the day. But just as he prepares to leave, a faint, unsettling noise echoes down the hallway. Curious about what it was, he follows the sound and soon sees a terrified girl sitting on the floor in one of the classrooms. Alarmed by this, he turns to find help, but halfway down the corridor, another girl crashes into him and urgently warns him to escape. Then the scene shifts to Kyla, days earlier, who is a high school student assigned to photograph her classmates for the yearbook. While making her rounds, she notices Chris, the school's new English teacher, whose arrival has sparked excitement, especially among the female students. Moments later, Trisha, who is one of the most popular girls in school, boldly declares that she will win his affection in just 2 days. In the meantime, Chris' first lesson quickly earns him admiration from the students as his charisma and charm draw the attention of nearly every girl in the class. So, wasting no time, Trisha begins flirting with him, but Chris appears unbothered by this and shows no response to her advances. Later on, when Kyla goes to the computer room, which is her favorite hangout spot, she meets Riley, a quiet girl who is also in her class. The two have never spoken to each other before, and as they strike up a conversation, Riley eventually reveals that Chris is her father. Immediately sensing that this is an opportunity to get closer to him, Kyla suggests they study together at Riley's house. That evening, Kyla fantasizes about Chris as she continues daydreaming about him. However, her thoughts are interrupted when she notices her mother preparing for a date. She sees a brand new dress hanging nearby, one Kyla has never seen her wear before, and when she asks about it, her mother simply says the relationship is not serious. The following day, Kyla visits Riley's home for their study session. As they talk, Riley opens up about her family and tells Kyla that her parents divorced after her father noticed that her mother was cheating on him. In turn, Kyla shares that her own father abandoned her when she was 6. When Riley eventually steps away to the bathroom, Kyla seizes the moment to sneak into Chris's room and fondle with Chris Beddings in her growing obsession with the man. Back at school, Trisha persists in her attempts to win over Chris, but he remains unaware of her true intentions. As she begins to sense a potential difficulty in her plans, Trisha approaches Riley and befriends her. Meanwhile, Kyla sees the two talking, and she immediately confronts Riley about her friendship with Trisha. She warns her that Trisha is dangerous and has a history of pursuing inappropriate relationships with teachers. Then she goes on to tell Riley that Trisha had an affair with a history teacher the previous year, which led to the teacher's abrupt departure from the school. Days later, Kyla calls Riley, and as they talk she learns that her birthday is approaching, and that she will soon turn 18. Kyla immediately encourages Riley to host a birthday party at her house, and offers to help organize it, as she promises to bring as many guests as possible. As they talk, the doorbell rings only for Kyla to find Chris standing at the door. That was when it is revealed that Chris is actually the man dating Kyla's mother, and this only ignites Kyla's jealousy the more. As she sees the two flirting, Kyla thinks up a plan to sabotage their date. So she acted as if by accident and poured the glass of water she was holding on Chris. And in a bid to keep them in the house, Kyla suggests that the two have their date in the house while she goes to her room. As they have dinner that night, Kyla's focus remains fixated on Chris. But she eventually becomes overwhelmed by the open affection between her mother and Chris, and she finally decides to go to her room. As she starts to anticipate a romantic night between them, Kyla devises a plan. She suddenly screams and rushes down as she claims that someone was watching her changing through the windows. Even when Chris goes to check her room and sees no one, Kyla continues to feign fear and eventually interrupt any intimacy between her mother and Chris. Later on, as she talks with Chris, Kyla learns that Riley was still very close to Trisha despite her warnings. The following morning, Chris offers to drive Kyla to school. But as they wait for Riley, Kyla engages in suggestive conversation with Chris as she tells him that she's old enough to do anything she wants and assert her independence too. Chris is saved from the uncomfortable conversation when Riley eventually joins them, and they ride off to school. When they arrived, Kyla confronts Riley regarding her association with Trisha and once again warns her that Trisha is merely using Riley to gain access to her father. However, Riley counters this by revealing that Trisha also had the same claim about Kyla and that she had also learnt that it was not Trisha, who had engaged in a relationship with their previous history teacher. Kyla denies the accusation, and her harsh response prompts Riley to leave. During break that day, Kyla confronts Trisha and issues a stern warning to stay away from Riley. But Trisha was unfazed by her threats, and she dares her. Back home that night, we see Kyla take a series of revealing photographs of herself. The next day, Kyla discovers her locker flooded with the private pictures she had taken and other pictures of Chris. She immediately rushes to Chris, who assures her that he will help to identify the perpetrator. At that moment, Riley sees the two of them together, and she quickly retreats from the class. Subsequently, Kyla and Riley reconcile, with Kyla admitting that she was actually the one who had the affair with the history teacher. However, she still manages to convince Riley to believe that she is her only true friend. A few days later, Kyla sees her mother preparing for a date with Chris. While she is getting ready, Kyla seizes the chance to look through Chris's phone where she finds suggestive messages from Trisha. Appearing disturbed and worried for her mother, Kyla informs her, and she immediately confronts Chris, accusing him of exploiting his students. This moment eventually ends their relationship as she tells him to leave. From her room upstairs, Kyla overhears everything, and in the end, she expresses her relief that her mother made the difficult choice. Meanwhile, Chris was still sitting in his truck outside, deep in thought when Kyla approaches and asks him to unlock the door. Once inside, she begins to seduce him, but despite his initial hesitation, Chris eventually gives in to her persistent advances. Satisfied, Kyla returns to the house, and that is when we realize that she had been the one sending the anonymous messages, impersonating Trisha to send the message and create the conflict. The next day at school, Chris appears distracted and Trisha, who is unaware of all that had happened, continues her flirting, but Kyla soon steps in to stop her. Then moments later, the police arrive and arrest Trisha, declaring that they found the phone used to send the incriminating messages to Chris, along with compromising photos of Kyla, hidden in Trisha's locker. That evening, Kyla attends Riley's birthday party, and after giving her a gift, she heads to Chris's room with clear intent. Once inside, she makes another attempt to seduce him, and although Chris resists at first, he eventually gives in. But their intimate moment is abruptly interrupted when Riley walks in. She was shocked and disgusted at the sight of the two of them, and she immediately stormed out. When Chris tries to follow her, Kyla stops him and claims that Riley has been battling alcoholism and needs space. However, Chris was not to be tricked by her, as he refuses to believe this, and eventually goes after his daughter. The following morning, Riley texted Kyla's mother about what she witnessed last night, and even when Chris attempts to mend their relationship, Riley chose to remain distant. After school that day, Kyla's mother confronts Chris in anger and even slaps him before taking Kyla away. However, as they leave, Kyla suddenly insists that she is legally an adult and free to love whomever she chooses, as she boldly declares her feelings for Chris and walks off. That evening, Riley eventually confronts her father and asks for an explanation. So, Chris breaks down and sincerely apologizes and promises to end his involvement with Kyla. After seeing his sincerity, Riley eventually forgives him. The following day, Kyla calls Trisha and arranges to meet with her before school. During their encounter, Kyla confesses to framing her, but then, she immediately starts to inflict injuries upon herself, and even deliberately breaking her own fingers to make it appear as though Trisha assaulted her. As Riley and Chris arrive on the scene, Kyla calls out for help, as she accuses Trisha of attacking her. Moments later, Trisha is arrested, and Kyla is taken to the hospital. When she eventually goes to see her, Riley informs Kyla that her connection with Chris is over. Appearing defeated, Kyla seems to have accepted her fate, and she asks Riley for a favor. She asks her to take over her yearbook duties for the upcoming basketball game, as she can't take any pictures due to her injured hand. She also requests for a final permission to speak to Chris one last time to say goodbye. Once Riley leaves the room, Kyla tells Chris that with Trisha gone, they can now be together. But Chris firmly rejects her, making it clear that their relationship is over and that he wants nothing more to do with her. Kyla, however, remains obsessively fixated on him, and she vows never to leave him and reminds him that they will be seeing each other every day at school. Seeing no end to these advances, Chris decides to quit his job in an attempt to escape Kyla's relentless obsession. As he returns to the classroom that evening to collect his belongings, Kyla escapes from the hospital after stealing a scalpel. At the school, she confronts Riley while she is taking the pictures Kyla had asked for. Kyla then declares that only one of them can remain in Chris's life, and without hesitation, she stabs Riley in the stomach and then proceeds to find Chris. Inside the classroom, Kyla attacks Chris too and presses the scalpel to his throat, insisting they are destined to be together. During this confrontation, she reveals that she had manipulated her previous teacher and that she will do the same with him. Meanwhile, Riley, who is still alive despite her injuries, drags herself up to search for help. Back inside, Chris manages to push Kyla away, but she responds and strikes out, causing him to hit his head on a table and lose consciousness. The loud impact is what draws the janitor's attention in the hallway. In the meantime, Kyla quickly drags Chris's unconscious body aside and fakes an injury as she calls for help. When the janitor had turned to go get assistance, that was when he collided with Riley, who frantically warned him to escape for his life. But before he can react, Kyla catches up and kills him to make sure that there are no witnesses. Then a fierce struggle breaks out between Riley and Kyla. Despite her injuries, Riley fights back and eventually overpowers Kyla and eventually brings an end to the violent confrontation. Later that night, an ambulance arrives to transport the wounded to the hospital. But as Riley is taken away, she is horrified to see that Kyla had survived from her hit. And at the end of the movie, we see that after several months, Chris and Riley have relocated to a new city, looking for a fresh start. And as Chris prepares for his new teaching position, Riley also looks forward to her first day of college. But as she drives away, a hooded figure steps out from the shadows, strongly suggesting that Kyla has continued with her obsession and is still stalking them. And that's the story of the movie, My Teacher, My Obsession. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also drop a comment for us. We'll love to hear from you. Until next time, stay safe.